Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Only just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up now. Just like a spark that's
Oops, I had the loop on. Welcome to the HVAC Guide for Homeowners YouTube channel live show where we talk about all things HVAC that no one else is talking about. We will be answering some of your questions live. Sometimes we are joined by other pros in the chat who might know answers to questions that I don't. So not only that, tonight we have a special guest. When I started making YouTube videos and this live show, my biggest goal was to give folks access to see and be a part of things that they can get nowhere else. And tonight is another great example of that. But before we bring on Will, let's take a moment to pay our bills and thank the sponsor of this show. I wanted to take a quick break from the video and thank the sponsor of this video, AeroSeal. Leaky ductwork is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, energy wasters in most homes in the United States. And my favorite way of fixing that problem is AeroSeal. They'll come into your home, they'll test your ductwork and how leaky it is. They'll seal all the ductwork with a machine, and then they'll test it again and make sure that you got what you paid for. Customers have reported a significant savings on their energy bills after using AeroSeal. I'll put a link down in the description of this video. Thanks again to AeroSeal, and now let's get back to the video. And real quick, next week's guest is actually going to be one of the top folks over at AeroSeal. So stay tuned for that. We are going to have some fun with those guys. Let me adjust one quick thing here. I'm never happy with how I look on camera, right? Tonight's guest is host of the Workman Protection Training YouTube channel. He is a firearms and this is live TV. You get to hear me toot in the microphone. He is a firearms and self-defense instructor, a former law enforcement officer, competitive shooter, and YouTuber. His YouTube channel, Workman Protection Training, focuses on giving everyday people the skills, tools, and mindset needed to protect themselves and their families. Please welcome Will Workman.
Hey,
Will.
guys. Hey, Josh. How's it going?
Oh, I forgot to do my thing. I've got this new thing that I'm going to start doing whenever I bring on guests. So I'm going to do it real quick.
All right, do it.
Please welcome Will Workman. There we go.
I love
totally forgot.
That made all the difference.
So I first of all, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself, but I think one of the things that I've already noticed some of the comments. First of all, those of you that are joining us, welcome. This is a special Wednesday night episode. We normally do our show on Tuesday nights, and just schedule didn't allow. And instead of completely canceling, I just moved it to Wednesday night. So thank you to those folks that are adjusting their schedules as well. But I noticed with some of the comments I've already gotten that whether we want it to or not, some of the things we say tonight, we're not intentionally making any political. I mean, I don't do anything political intentionally because, I don't agree with either side most times. Right. And, but I think this is one of those sort of topics, especially as someone that works in the trade and has gone into people's homes and also been exposed to some very dangerous things at times, right? That this is still a topic that should be, in my opinion, should be considered more often. And so that's what prompted me to. Will's actually become a really good friend of mine as well, for anyone that doesn't know. But it prompted me to say, this is something that we should talk about on our channel here. So anyway,
Yeah.
if you would just maybe take a moment and introduce yourself and your vitals and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Will Workman. Like Josh said, I have a YouTube channel, Workman Protection Training, and then I'm also a firearms instructor. And kind of the way I got into the channel was because I started doing basically stuff for friends to show them, how to be safe around guns, how to, what type of handgun to buy, how to shoot a handgun, things like that. And that kind of got me into making these kind of instructional videos and got me interested in actually getting my certification to instruct and taking some training classes on my own. And really the motivation for me, like getting into it, was just to protect my family. Like I tell people all the time, I'm not necessarily a gun guy. Like I'm not obsessed with guns. There's guys that love to have arguments about, what red dot is the best or what carry gun is the best. And that's not me. Like the gun is a tool to me, and I care about protecting my family. So that's the extent of my into gunness that I am. I'm into self-protection. I'm into self-defense and keeping my family safe. So that's kind of what the channel is about. And that's what my instructing is about too.
Yeah. We actually did so one of the things I do, Will, I don't know if you've ever seen my live show, but
Mhm.
we will sometimes share stories in the HVAC industry. And we talked about a story a few weeks ago about a fella that was just living life, doing his job,
Mhm.
and was attacked and ultimately killed, just trying to, doing his job and taking care of his family,
Yeah.
and I obviously that's very sad, but the first thing I thought of was, had he not been in a city
Mhm.
that, I don't want to get into any specifics, but a city that's not so friendly to,
Mhm.
it's sometimes seems to me like if you're doing everything right, they're the ones that seem to get punished the most, right? And so
Right.
he
Right.
happened to be in a city that is not friendly to folks, protecting themselves.
Mhm.
They seem to protect everyone else,
Right.
and I just wonder, had he been, protecting himself,
Mhm.
if things would have been different. Had he been, would he have been able to go home and have dinner with his family that night,
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's the sad thing, is that the part that people really don't think about is you don't get to pick the time and the place that bad things happen. You just don't. The bad guy gets to pick that. And all we get to do as protectors is, decide whether we're going to have the skills and the tools and the mindset that we need to protect ourselves if, God forbid that moment comes. But we don't get to pick when it happens.
Yeah. Um, I'll say for myself, so I live in a state where I know every state's different, right? So
Mhm.
some states you can't even own certain things. Some states, it's almost like you can own a militia if you wanted to. There's two sides of the coin. And I live in a state that you have to apply for and get a license to be able to conceal a weapon.
Mhm.
You can either open carry, or you have to get a license to conceal it.
Mhm.
And I live in Virginia.
Yeah.
And so and that's where you live too, right? Or West
I'm
Virginia.
in West Virginia, but I'm right on the border. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So anyway, when the whole thing happened in Colorado, where that fellow went into the movie theater and did what he did,
Mhm.
I went that next week and got my concealed permit,
Yeah.
because I said, wow, that's, you just never know. Like, it could just happen.
Yeah.
You're just trying to watch a stinking movie.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
what's something that people get wrong a lot? You know, when you're training people and they're learning more about this, what's maybe a misconception or something that they get wrong often?
Yeah, I think so. I get a lot of different people in my classes, honestly, from all walks of life. I get people that have been through self-defense encounters, that have, had scary things happen in their life or have been threatened, and that's kind of why they're pursuing firearms training. And most of the time, those people get it for the most part. Like they understand the importance, the seriousness of the training. And then especially with just concealed carry classes, you get a lot of guys coming through that just are there to check that box, right? They're just there to, get that certificate so that they can get their permit. They could care less whether they learn anything or not. And the challenge with that is that they think that the gun is always the answer. And that's something that I push really hard on my channel, in that you need to be skilled with your gun. You need to train with your gun. You need to take classes. Like the gun is a really important tool, but it's not the end all be all. And especially with protecting yourself, 80% of assaults in America are simple assaults, 80%, which means they don't involve a weapon. And that means that for the most part, you can't use a gun in those scenarios. You need to have some other skills. You need to have some verbal judo to be able to, talk yourself out of some situations. You need to have some mindset to be able to say something doesn't look right, so I need to get out of here just in case something, goes bad. Or carrying OC spray. If you have somebody who is aggressive or physically assaulting you, but it's not a deadly threat, then having other skills and tools on you is crucial. And most people that I talk to that are really into the guns, they almost obsess over the gun, because that's the cool part, right? Like if you're into this stuff, like the gun is the fun part. Whether you're into concealed carry or training or not, like shooting a gun is really fun. And so people get wrapped up in that. And don't get me wrong, like that's a big part of what my channel is about. I went to the range this morning. Like I love shooting, I love training, but it's not the tool for every circumstance. And so that's something that I really try to push hard in my classes. Are you need to carry other tools like OC spray, like a trauma medical kit, things like that. And you need to have some other skills and be able to distinguish between, okay, this is a situation where I'm threatened with deadly force and I need to be ready to use my firearm, versus here's some other scenarios that I could enter where my firearm would get me in trouble, would not actually help.
Yeah, I've heard of scenarios where, guys that were just trying to protect themselves, they were the victim here, but because they went that far, they pulled that gun, and in some cases didn't even use the gun, they just pulled it out,
Right.
and now they're breaking laws.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, do you have an affiliate link for that spray you were talking about? If you do, feel free to share that.
Yeah, I don't have an affiliate link, but I'll tell you which one that I have. I carry Palm OC spray. So
Okay.
I don't have any affiliate relationship with them, but I love their products. They're really small. They're just in a little plastic canister. And this one that I have has a clip, so it just goes like on the inside of my pocket. And then my wife has one that's connected to her keychain. So they make a couple different kinds, but it's really good stuff.
Okay. Give me just a second here, because I think I have an affiliate link for them then.
Oh, there you go.
I'm going to put a link to that in the chat for anybody that wants to check that spray out.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a quick story. My wife and I, when we met, we were living in Richmond, which is probably the biggest city around near us, if you're not counting DC. And we live in a small town now, but before, we had already bought our house. We just hadn't moved into it in the small town yet. So we were still living in Richmond. And this guy chased my wife one night in the middle of Richmond. We were living in an area called Carytown, which is near the VCU campus. Very vibrant area, lots of restaurants, lots of college kids.
Yeah.
And she was just out walking her dog, and it was late. I mean, it was probably after 10 o'clock, but it wasn't quite midnight. And she was just walking the dog before bed, and this fella chased her. And I'm not going to go into what happened after that, but I'll just say that I put the fear in him after that. after he
I'm
put the
sure.
fear in her. And but it was a wake up call. I was very thankful that we had already. I mean, within a month from then, we actually moved,
Mhm.
to a small town. But
Yeah.
it was a little bit of a wake up call, and I was thankful that nothing else happened. But
Mhm.
I've always heard it said that if you pull that gun, you better be ready. You're essentially saying, I'm now going to use it. I'm not
Right.
going to pull it as
Right.
a scare tactic. I'm pulling it to use it now. And I believe it's escalated to that point,
Right. Right.
right?
Exactly.
Hopefully you still
Exactly.
don't have to, but you
Right.
shouldn't be pulling it out unless you're prepared to use it at that point,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Or at least have the realization that it is a deadly weapon, whether you're actually shooting, whether you're pointing it at somebody, or whether you're just drawing it. You're bringing the deadly weapon to the fight, essentially. So it better be a fight that requires a deadly weapon, or that's really bad for you.
Have you ever had anybody like that are in the trades like I am, or just in a profession at all where they were coming to your classes to now carry some protection because of their work?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I get a lot of like realtors in my classes.
Oh, yeah.
I did a video just a few weeks ago on like the three most dangerous professions that people don't even think about, and one of them was realtors because there's a lot of there's males and females, but there's a lot of time where you are by yourself as a realtor and you're showing people houses, and these people like sent you a Facebook message or sent you an email,
Yeah.
or like sent you a text that they saw on the
Yeah.
sign. So you don't know them very well.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of realtors that kind of come in with the understanding of like, okay, like I've been in some situations where I'm thinking like maybe I shouldn't have met this guy out here, or maybe I should have told somebody, to check in on me or that kind of thing. And then I get, social workers, I get daycare workers, like people from all walks of life that really are just thinking about their profession, and especially ones that are alone. Gas station clerks is another one. They're just robbed all the time, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying that like every gas station is robbed all the time, but gas stations in general, like it's a transitional space where people can get in, get valuables, and get out. And a lot of them, they're coming in and they are completely willing to use whatever violence they need to in order to get what they want. And sometimes even if you completely give them what they want, they still want to be violent.
To harm you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of professions, like yours, where folks are by themselves or work alone often, and they're at different people's houses or in different neighborhoods, and they don't really get to pick where they go or how safe the neighborhood is. They're just there doing a job, and they're concerned for their safety.
Yeah. Yeah. Realtors. I think that's a really good point. Especially, I mean, I feel like a lot of realtors are ladies and
Hmm.
they're taking a strain. I've often thought that, years ago, I when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life, there was a little
Hmm.
spurt of time where I sold cars.
Yeah.
And so when someone would come in to test a car, hello to Emery, by the way. Those of you that are joining us, our numbers are a little low tonight, and I think that's just because we're on a different night. Do me a favor and like and share the stream here, and see if we can get these numbers up a little bit, if you don't mind. If you're willing to. Um, but so anyway, so the thing with when I was selling cars, for them to even be allowed to drive the car,
Hmm.
to do a test drive, we I'm not saying we did like a full background check, but they definitely had to have
Hmm.
their driver's license, and we
Yeah.
got a copy of their driver's license and so on. And I feel like realtors could there should be some sort of policy in place
Right.
where, if you're going to, I'll meet you at the house, I'll show you the house, but
Hmm.
first we're going to meet at my office. You need to bring an ID.
Right.
You
Right.
need to, we're gonna, if nothing else, have your info on file in case you are up to no good,
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, like realtors are so mistreated. Like people people will text that. I have a good friend that's a realtor, and he said people will text him at like 11:30 at night and be like, I want to see this house tomorrow morning. And he's like, look, like, that's not how this works. Like, but yeah, people just want to show up at all kinds of different hours and expect you to show them, the house. And yeah, people are pretty demanding.
Yeah. Yeah. Emery was asking, why are we doing it on a different night? We just had I had a schedule conflict, but instead of just completely canceling, I decided to just, move it to a different night. Brian says, just got here pre-approval. Yeah. Have some, if nothing else, a way to capture their information, before they're,
Mm-hmm.
they're, alone with them. Right.
Right.
And that might alone thwart some of
Mm-hmm.
their, if they know that they're no longer going to be, anonymous,
Mm-hmm.
not
Right.
only am I going to get your ID, but we're going to do a headshot. I'm going to send it into a database, and
Mm-hmm.
that database has AI technology. We're going to make sure you are who you say you are. I mean, I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
If nothing else, I feel like just in the name of safety
Yeah.
for the realtors,
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, and especially females, in that video, I get a lot of female realtors in my concealed carry classes. And then I actually have a realtor safety class that I teach as well. That's specific to realtors. And we talk about, stuff like that, like how common these things are and the things that you can do ahead of time to really like prepare for them. And in that video and in my realtor safety class, I show a couple clips where these female realtors were sexually assaulted, just for, trying to show this house. And, a lot of times they get inside the house with this guy and they have this feeling of like, something's not right, but they don't want to be rude, or they don't want to come across as like a jerk, or, just, they're afraid of, well, maybe I'm wrong. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just thinking too much into it. And, they're almost ignoring that creep alarm that they have to say something's not right. And it's awful that it happens, but that's why it's so important to be prepared, especially if you're in professions where you're alone a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother topic when guys do that sort of stuff. I think that, anyway, I'm not gonna say what I think they should do to those guys. Let's change gears for a minute and,
Mhm.
let's talk about you and obviously you've got this YouTube channel. You're trying to spread this message of being safer and
Mhm.
doing certain things the proper way instead of just in an ignorant or uneducated way. And that's my words,
Mhm.
not yours.
Yeah.
And so what made you start doing YouTube, and what's the message there that you're trying to get across with your channel?
Yeah. So with my YouTube channel, I really wanted to, this is a big undertaking, but I really wanted to change the gun culture and change the concealed carry culture, where folks were actually prepared. Because, like I said before, like one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they get a gun, they get a cheap holster, they get their concealed carry permit, and they think, I'm good. Like, I might go shoot a couple times a year. I may never draw for my holster, never practice for my holster, but I'm good. Like I'm completely protected, because if anybody tries to hurt me or my family, I'm going to shoot them. And they just think that that's the answer to it. And I just started raising these questions when I had conversations with people like this, and just saying like, oh, well, what if somebody wants to get in a fist fight with you and they're a lot bigger than you are? Like, are you going to shoot them? Are you legally able to shoot them? Are you going to be able to, number one, are you going to get away with that? But more than that, like morally, are you going to be able to like sleep at night knowing that like all I had was a gun, I didn't have any other tools or skills, so I just killed them? And then, you've got the big legal possibility of maybe getting charged with manslaughter, which is completely plausible in that scenario. Or what if a dog is attacking you? Are you going to shoot him? Not to say that you definitely can't, but and I started asking, do you carry OC spray? Have you ever done any martial arts training or anything like that? And especially OC spray, like it's like $10. Like it doesn't really require a lot of training. It's $10. And man, it hurts. Like it can solve problems real quick. And then trauma medical kits. Like I really am passionate about that. I'm kind of a medical nerd when it comes to trauma medical gear and training, in that I met all of these people that were all about stopping an active shooter and all about protecting themselves, all about protecting their communities, which is great. Like, don't get me wrong, but they never thought about the possibility of, what if I do everything right and I still get hit in the gunfight, or the person behind me gets hit in the gunfight? Or what if I'm in church and several people get hit in the gunfight? What then? Like, do I have any skills beyond taking down the threat? Do I carry trauma medical gear on me? Have I taken a Stop the Bleed class? And for most concealed carriers, the answer is no. The answer is they have their gun and their cheap holster that they practice with a couple times a year, and that's it. And so I really wanted to challenge people with the YouTube channel. And I knew going into it, like, this is going to be a firearms education channel. It's not a gun tube entertainment channel. Like, I'm not blowing stuff up. I'm not, trying to clickbait people into just being entertained. Although obviously, like, I want my videos to be engaging, but I'm about educating people, and I'm about educating people in really being prepared for what happens in real life when you have to use your firearm, when you don't have to use your firearm, when you need to use your words or your skills to get out of a situation rather than stick around for the fight, and when you need to use medical gear and have medical training to stop the bleeding after the fight takes place. So that's really the change that I want to see in the gun culture. And I don't mean to knock, I don't mean to knock gun guys or knock concealed carriers, because I've met a ton of them that have an amazing mindset. Like, they really want to protect themselves and their families. But I just sometimes see these things when I raise these questions. They've never thought about this before. And so that's something I really wanted to help people with, is kind of, what if the gun is not always the answer? And even if it is, like, do you have the skills to, if you have to make a shot at 30 yards, or you have to hit somebody really quickly before they hit you, do you have those skills? Do you practice? Do you train enough to have those important skills, rather than just having the gun on you or in your car and thinking that's good enough?
Let me ask you a question. This is something that I've struggled with over the years, that, and this is probably a little, I said I didn't want to get political, but
Do it. It's your show, not mine.
Well, so my one thing I've struggled with over the years, and I'm not saying I break this rule, but let's just say I know people that do.
Sure.
And that is, there are people, when they hear of these gun-free zones, what's your position on that? As far as, I'm not saying we're going to advise anybody to break any laws, but to me, those are the areas I feel the most vulnerable. And those are the areas that I could see someone actually breaking those rules, because the bad guys are thinking, oh, well, nobody's supposed to have guns in these gun-free zones, and this building that I'm now going into. And so what are your thoughts on that? Without advising someone to break a law.
Yeah. So the fact of the matter is, it's not just a feeling, right? It's not just like, I kind of feel vulnerable, but maybe that's just me being paranoid. No, like, school shootings happen, church shootings happen. And, we look at Uvalde and the writing that we had from the shooter, and the shooter said, like, I was going to choose a different school, but they had armed security, so I went with this one. Or, I'm sorry, it was the Nashville shooting, not the Uvalde one, the Nashville shooting. They said, I was going to go to this other school, but they had armed security, so I knew that I couldn't kill as many people. So they went to this other school that didn't have armed security.
That was the one with the girl that went into the private school?
Yes. I think it was a Jewish school or Christian school. Yeah. She knew that it was unprotected. And so that was vulnerable. And same thing with, movie theaters, with malls, with churches that have these strict rules. They're usually very open about that. It's on their Facebook page, it's on their website, or it's at the edge of their parking lot. And literally all somebody has to do is go, there's somewhere where nobody has guns. Like, if you want to kill as many people as possible, that's the place that you go. And so that's the terrifying thing as a protector, is, the places that we really need to have guns, that we really, need be well protected in those areas are the ones that that we're told we're not allowed to carry there. So again, I'm not going to advise people either way, but I will say do what you need to do to protect your family. And also like know the laws in your state and know the difference between like government buildings and places where you legally cannot carry, like a courthouse, banks, things like that, versus like private businesses that just have a policy that you can't carry. And I will say that's different in different states, because some states, like if they have it posted, then that's an extension of the law in a way, which is kind of unconstitutional, but you know, that you have to have permission from the owner or something. But in some states, if it's against the policy, then all they can do is ask you to leave for breaking the policy if they catch you with a gun.
Oh, interesting.
It's not
I didn't know that.
necessarily,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
just
it
because they
depends
have
on
a
the
cute
state.
little sign up that says, you know, no firearms in this building does not
Mhm.
necessarily mean that they can enforce that by law.
Right. Depending on the state. Yeah. Depending on the state. Because some states treat that as if it's law. Other states are like, it's private property and they can have those rules. And if you don't follow the rules, then you can leave and they could give you a ticket for trespassing if law enforcement is called. But again, that's if you're caught with the gun or if you have to use the gun. If you're concealed carrying and nobody ever sees it, then nobody ever sees it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think that it is concerning and it is scary that the places that we are most vulnerable are places that you are not allowed to have your guns.
Yeah. I'll just say that, you know, and I'll just say to these cowards that like to do these mass shootings, if you, without admitting anything on my part, I will just say that if they think they're safe going into some of those places and no
Mhm.
one's got a gun, they might be surprised. I'll
Right.
just say that.
Yeah.
Especially some of our churches. I know that
Mhm.
there are some of my churches that are local churches to me
Mhm.
where they don't care what the policy is,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
good luck if you go in there, you know.
Right. Right.
So well, and let me just kind of piggyback off of that for a second, because
Mhm.
I have worked at companies where they have said it is our policy that you're not going to be
Mhm.
carrying, you're not going to have, you know, any sort of protection with you.
Mhm.
That's our policy. And I do think that, and I think it's a valid argument for
Mhm.
some homeowners to say, I don't want an electrician or a plumber
Mhm.
or a heating and air guy bringing protection into my home,
Mhm.
um, because of fill in blank, you know.
Right.
I think that's a whole nother sticky topic,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, is there anything you can add on that part, or just kind of the same?
Yeah, I think that that's first of all, I think it's a terrible thing for any business or organization to do, honestly. Like if you want to be open and say like, look, we're fine with you having your concealed carry, you know, whatever, then that's fine. Like get your concealed carry permit. If you want to have that as a policy, then great. If you don't want to say anything about it for liability reasons and just say like, we haven't talked about it, that's on them. I get that. Like that's the big concern for businesses and big corporations, is that they don't want the liability of, well, we haven't trained them with a firearm. Our job is not to have a firearm. So we don't want that liability. So that's why they're putting it in the policy. Most of them are not doing it to necessarily make sure that nobody has guns. It's just to cover their own butt. You know, if you have to use a gun. Now, that's not to say if they catch you with it, they're not going to fire you. But again, I think you have to make your own decisions. And to me, like my life is always going to be more valuable than some job. Like I'm not going to give up my life or put myself at risk to make a boss happy. I can always find another job. Can't find another life if I'm dead. So
Yeah.
I think that that's a decision that everybody has to make. And it's made news headlines quite a few times with companies like Uber. Uber doesn't let their drivers carry, which is kind of strange because they're contracted out anyway. They're not employees.
Yeah, that's odd.
Yeah, but they're Uber drivers. Like, what do? They pick up drunk people at 4 a.m. that are getting in bar fights and are asked to leave the bar, right? You talk
Yeah.
about a dangerous job, like sketchy people. And so we've seen a lot of Ubers have those dash cam videos, and we've seen videos of them being robbed or them being shot or attacked. And we've seen a few of them actually like have their own firearm and defend themselves, and they always lose their job because of it. But again, you can always get another job, but your life is more valuable.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you know, does Lyft have the same policy? Because if not, then I'll be using Lyft from now on.
Yeah, I don't know. I would assume so, just because it's fairly common, but I'm really not sure. I think
Yeah.
some of that may have to do with where the company is based.
Yeah.
But one more thing I'll say on that: when I worked in social work, that's another profession that I get a lot of folks coming into my classes for that. But when I worked in social work several years ago, we were not allowed to carry by policy. And, we would go to these houses where these parents literally the system took their kids away because they were drug addicts and they were violent offenders, and they're, in and out of prison. Like these are dangerous people with meth labs in their basement, like people with, domestic violence on a regular nightly thing. And we weren't allowed to carry when we went to their homes. And actually in our training, one of the things that they said was, somebody brought up dogs and said, well, what if there's a dog that's trying to attack us? And they said, well, you could carry something like lemon juice to like squirt in the dog's eyes if a dog's going to attack you. And I'm like, do you not understand how dog attacks works, or how like people attacks works? Because it doesn't go as like you think it does, where you can just squirt lemon juice in somebody's eye or in a dog's eye, and that's going to be it. But they wanted to cover themselves and just say like, no, you can't have it because we don't want it to affect us. And it's something that especially people in those professions, they need to be able to carry firearms. They need OC spray.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, from someone that has employed others, I could see why some companies might have policies in place to, if nothing else, protect themselves in case you get an employee that's being an idiot.
Sure.
Sure. But yeah, no, that's interesting. What's the craziest thing that you have seen or heard since you've started down this road? You got any crazy stories?
Oh man, with students or just things that I've experienced?
I don't know. You just tell me the craziest thing. If you need a minute to think about it, I can give you mine.
Yes, I can give you a couple things that I've kind of been through.
Okay.
I've been through. So part of the reason that I'm such a nerd with trauma medical stuff is that I tell people all the time, I've never had to draw my firearm in self-defense, thank goodness, but I've had to use my trauma kit 4 different times.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So 2 of those were car wrecks, and one of them, the car had flipped and was on its side. And it was just a mess. Like the driver was on his side up above the passenger, and he was like bleeding from his head. He was, bleeding down onto his wife, and we were trying to get her out of the car in order to let him down out of the car. And it was just kind of a crazy. There was an ambulance driver that just happened to be passing by, and he like when I pulled up, he was in the middle of the road with his door wide open, like no lights on or anything. And so he obviously just saw it and like didn't even have time to turn his lights on or get the call or anything, just jumped out. So we were helping him essentially try to get these people out of this car that was sideways. So it was just nuts. And then I had to use it another time in a car accident where a lady hurt her leg. She cut it up pretty bad. And then my wife, actually, we were hiking. We were getting ready to hike, and we got out of the car, and she went to step, and she was wearing sandals. And there was a stick under the tire of our car. And when she stepped, the stick went completely between her toes and
Ow.
just stuck in there. Yeah. So without getting too graphic, it was pretty nasty. And I was glad that I had some trauma gear then too. And then we had a guy at our church fall and hit his head on the pew and had to get about 7 stitches.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Crazy, man. But really, like when you think about stuff that happens, like gunfights don't happen that often. And don't get me wrong, like it's important to have a gun, on you and be prepared to use it, because that's like a big consequence if you don't, right? But like medical emergencies happen all the freaking time. And that's something that I have seen improvements on in workplaces and in schools and churches, some, but I'd like to see a lot more of. is not only first aid and CPR training, which has become huge, but also stop the bleed classes when you've got really emergency bleeding and you need to apply a tourniquet or you need to pack a wound or put on a chest seal. So yeah, I've been through just some random medical emergencies that I was very thankful that I had my trauma kit with me.
My wife and I were just leaving. We had so we live near Busch Gardens here in Virginia, and every Christmas, Busch Gardens has Christmas lights. They fill up the entire amusement park with all these lights, and they call it Christmas Town.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were leaving Christmas Town, and we get to this stoplight, and this was just a couple weeks ago. This car just plows into this other car, T-bones them, and the car flipped like you were describing. You know what's crazy is now one lady did have a big bump on her wrist and had to go to the hospital, but they all walked away from that.
Jeez.
Everyone, I mean, it was just nuts.
That's honestly how this one was. Like when the car flipped, like the driver had a big gash on his head, but I mean, he walked away. Like they were all like, they ended up getting in the ambulance just kind of as all right, let's go get checked out. But they all walked away. It was crazy.
I think they should. If you're in that, I mean, I feel like when we were there, some of the firemen, now this is not a knock on firemen. I think they're all amazing. And I so appreciate what they do, but I could hear the firemen asking them, are you good? You think you're good to go home? And I'm like, no, they're not good to go home. What I just saw, everyone needs, just to be clear, everyone needs to go to the hospital and get checked out right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So actually the car that flipped, I was working in law enforcement at the time. And so I had jumped out of the car to help get these people out of the car. We actually had to bust through the windshield to get them out of the car. And after we get them all out, this cop pulls up, and he's an older guy, like probably in his late 50s, and he's got like a big mustache, like very stereotypical cop. And he just walks up and puts both hands on his hip. And the teenage daughter has been like panic attack, like flipping out the whole time. Oh my gosh, is my dad okay? Like he's bleeding so much. And we finally get them out of the car, and he walks up to her, and it's just kind of like, so what happened? I'm like, dude, like, how about like, are you okay?
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Do you think he was like blacked out, like he didn't know what happened, or?
No, I'm talking about the cop. The cop was the one that walked up and was like, all right, what happened? Like, just kind of like a regular day in the office.
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess for him, maybe it is. Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah.
So Emery asks, what are the laws in your states concerning concealed and open carry? Just curious. So first of all, Emery, I know you've told me before, but what state are you in? I think I remember, but I don't want to say it and be wrong. But you want to answer that, Will?
Yeah, so I'm in West Virginia, but I'm right on the border of West Virginia and Virginia. So when I go to Walmart, I go to Virginia. When I go to church, I go to Virginia. When I worked in law enforcement, I was on the Virginia side. So I'm close enough to where I have to be careful of both states because I'm in them both constantly. West Virginia does not require you to have a concealed carry permit. They're a constitutional carry state. Which means that you can open carry or you can conceal carry without having a permit. But they also do have concealed carry. You can get your concealed carry permit in West Virginia, which I have. And I still teach the concealed carry class in West Virginia. And the main reason for that where we live is because we're so close to Virginia. Virginia does not have constitutional carry, but a West Virginia concealed carry permit you can use in Virginia. So I have people like when I teach the class, it's essentially the same class. So I actually have about half and half West Virginia residents and Virginia residents because they want to be covered in both states. And you can get, with the certificate that I give, I just have to put what state it's for. But it's essentially the same class for concealed carry in both states.
Got it. Okay. So like there's no law because I've always wondered, there's laws in DC that we don't have here in Virginia. So like if I even go to like a basketball game, I'll go to a Wizards game every now and then, and I'll park in DC, and I'm like, well, I have protection. I need to probably know the laws better than I do.
Right.
Emory's in Texas. I think you can own a militia down there if you wanted to.
So actually, I will say I'm pretty sure West Virginia went to constitutional carry before Texas did. Surprisingly. But yeah, so the best resource for that is USCCA's website. I think it's just uscca.com. And they have a reciprocity map for each state. So if you have your concealed carry in Texas or in Virginia, it'll show you what other states that accounts for, which states recognize.
Where is that at? What website?
USCCA. Let me pull it up.
USCCA.
Yep. USCCA. Oh, I'm sorry. So it's usconcealedcarry.com is their website.
I was hoping to find that map, but that's I see their website, so I'll just share their website here. Oh, there it is. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
So let me share that link here in our chat here.
Perfect. I was about to do
in case anybody wants to.
Yeah, so most states, honestly, like there's certain states that just like don't recognize anyone's. Like I'll give you an example, Maryland's. Like as it stands right now, I can teach the concealed carry class in Maryland. Like I've gone through the state police, not training, but they have an online thing basically where I had to apply and show that I was an NRA instructor and all those kind of things. I can teach the concealed carry class. Still can't carry in Maryland without going through their concealed carry class and applying for a permit. They're like, even as an instructor, my concealed carry permit is not good enough to carry in Maryland. So each one is a little bit different, but depending on what state you're in, like I think West Virginia is good for something like 35 states. So as long as they accept your concealed carry, then you can carry in there as well.
Yeah, I guess there's no, like, because I know like with cars, in Virginia, you have to have a license plate, for example, on the front and the back, right? And but if you are driving a car from another state through Virginia, you kind of get grandfathered. But I'm guessing with guns, there ain't no grandfather, and you need to follow our laws,
No, which is why so many states have been going to constitutional carry, which I think is awesome. Like I think constitutionally, like your first, and this may get a little political. People may be offended. That's okay. It's your channel, not mine. Your First Amendment right? Your First Amendment rights don't change from state to state because it's a constitutional right. It's federal, right? It's for all of America. Your freedom of religion does not change from state to state. And yet the Second Amendment is treated as if like, well, but each state is a little bit different, right? So it's kind of one of those things that a lot of states that are Second Amendment friendly are really moving towards that constitutional carry because they're recognizing that we as Americans, we all have the same rights. And so we want to make that as universal as possible as we can in our states. Now, obviously, like Maryland, California, they're going to do what they want. Can't make any states do anything, but a lot of these states that are Second Amendment friendly are going to that.
When I sent you the list of questions I might ask you for tonight's show, one of those questions was a goofy invention. Did you see that?
I did.
Did you come up with one?
I do. I have a great one.
Oh my gosh, you're going to be the first guest ever that's going to do this. Okay. Hold on. Tonight, we're going to do our segment. For those of you that have joined us before, we do a goofy invention segment. Let me do my promo. All right, let's hear this goofy invention, Will.
Okay, so I'm a really practical person, right? Like I have no creativity unless it's something that's really logical that I could use. This might exist, but I have not been able to find it anywhere except for in Avengers Endgame. Okay. So in Avengers Endgame, Hawkeye has this wrist piece that's kind of like a watch or something. It's a wrist piece, and it has this flashlight on it that's attached to the wrist piece. So essentially, it's like a bracelet or a watch that has a really bright flashlight. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, like, we have headlamps, we have handheld flashlights, we've got keychains, but I've never seen a watch that actually has like a bright flashlight with it. And think about how useful that would be. if you're just like going to your car or, you know, getting whatever, taking the trash out at night, and you've got your hands full, but you've got a flashlight just attached to your wrist, so you don't even have to hold anything or push buttons or anything.
Dude, this is called goofy inventions. That's actually a really good idea.
It's just, it's too cool.
That's like a blanket with arms or sleeves on it called the Snuggie, and the next
Right,
$1,000,000
right.
idea, you might need to hurry up and get that patented. That's
I
pretty good.
I think it's one of those things that would go best with a smartwatch. Like, honestly, like, we have flashlights on our phone. Like, come on, Apple. Why can't we have like a super bright flashlight just on an Apple Watch?
Yeah. I've seen, so like when I buy my flashlights for work, there are these lights that can attach to the end of your finger. So as you're working, you can light up what you're working on. But what
Mhm.
you're describing seems very practical,
Yeah,
especially for folks that already wear a wristwatch every day.
right.
And
Exactly.
that's pretty clever, Mr. Will. You need to get that patented.
I know, right?
Usually my goofy inventions are like pie in the sky weird stuff. Like, I'll
Yeah.
usually I'll have like 15 people in our streaming live, and it'll drop to 5 all of a sudden, you know.
Immediately.
So that's pretty cool. No, I wasn't expecting that. I've sent those lists of questions and goofy inventions to a few guests, and this is the first time anybody's had one. So
Well, there you
that's
go.
pretty good.
Overachiever.
Yeah. If you had a top 3, I don't know, like a top 3 tips for somebody that is interested in protecting themselves,
Mhm.
whether it's in, fixing an air conditioner or just in general, what's your top 3? Do you have a top 3?
Yeah, absolutely. So just for like people that are interested in concealed carrying in general?
Yeah, or
If
just
you want, yeah,
protection in general.
yeah,
If you've got a tip that may,
yeah,
may not even involve that. I mean,
yeah,
I really like some of your advice already.
yeah,
I'm gonna be getting one of those trauma kits, I think,
yeah,
because I never even thought of that. That's pretty
yeah,
good.
absolutely, absolutely. And I'll stick that in the chat here in just a minute. I do have an affiliate for that one, but I'll stick
Oh,
that in
good.
here in just a minute. But yeah, so the three things that I would definitely say are carry tools, carry more than your gun. Because you don't know what you're going to need, and you don't get to pick the situation that you're going to be in. And it may be a situation where nothing necessarily violent has happened, but somebody has cut themselves or has fallen or whatever and is bleeding to death, and you need a trauma kit to deal with that. Or a dog attacks you, and maybe there's a bunch of kids, like it's the kid's dog, but the dog is aggressive. Like, if you can spray that dog down and give him a bad day, then that's a lot better than having to shoot that dog.
Yeah.
So have other tools on you that you have at your disposal. And then the second thing is get training. Like, over 90% of gun owners in America don't take any training past their concealed carry required training, which is sad, and it's kind of scary. And again, not to get political, but I'm not saying that it should be required by the government, or that, training should be mandated for concealed carry. Like, I think that constitutional carry is a great thing. I think that you have a constitutional right, and you shouldn't be required to do anything in order to have that right. But at the same time, as gun owners, we should have a personal responsibility to get training, and to actually be safe, and to be well equipped to use that gun. And some of that means like having a safe holster, rather than just having like a soft, basically a sock with a clip on it that you could pull the trigger right through the holster. You need to have like a hard shell holster that actually holds your firearm securely, that covers your trigger guard completely, and allows you to get to it consistently. If it's buried in your clothing, or it's got a strap over top of it, you're not going to be able to get to it consistently. So get that training to know those things. So that's my top 2. What's it there? I had a third, and now I've lost it. Dang, it was a good one too. It was a good
While you're thinking of it, I was just gonna say, instead of instead of shooting the dog,
Mhm.
um, and instead of carrying some sort of spray to hurt the dog, why not just carry dog treats? That dog might
You
become your
know,
best friend.
it's not a bad idea either, but some dogs, when they're running at you, there's nothing that's gonna distract them.
I have
Oh,
a customer, or I used to have a customer, that had a Australian Shepherd dog,
yeah.
and he I liked him, but I think he loved me, or at least loved my van,
Yeah.
because as soon as I would get there and I would open the side to get my tools out, he
Mhm.
would roll up in there. And the reason was, the first time I ever went there, I had beef jerky wide open sitting in the seat, and I didn't have beef jerky after that.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't
he
blame you.
and I think I was his new favorite repairman
Yeah.
after
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So the third that I'll say, and this may
the
ruffle
top
some feathers.
3 there. What
Oh,
was that?
you froze up for a second. Sorry.
Yeah, my
Um,
internet, man.
it might be mine. I don't know. So the third one that I would say, and this may ruffle some feathers, but be careful who you listen to. When it comes to, I realize that I'm saying this as a YouTuber and as a firearms instructor, but be careful who you train with and who you listen to, whose YouTube channel you watch, who you take classes with. A big misconception in the training community is that if somebody has law enforcement or military experience, they're already at the top of the list of like people that know everything. And don't get me wrong, like some of my favorite instructors are law enforcement and military guys, especially when it comes to rifle training. Like they if they have specialty training in that, they may know a ton. But there's a lot of people that are able to get their instructor certification just because they're military or law enforcement. And law enforcement is, for the most part, required to do their qualification drill, which a lot of them are kind of a joke, once a year. And as long as they pass that, that's it. Like they don't have to be experts with a gun. Not only do they not have to be experts with a gun, but they're not experts in self-defense law. Like they may know legally what they're allowed to do and what they're able to do and what their department policy is, but they're not really trained in legally what a civilian can and can't do, and case studies of what we've seen in court in defensive shootings. And then like with military guys, a lot of them, they may be beasts with rifles and know all kinds of stuff about them. But they, for the most part, most military guys, unless they're, specialized training in pistol shooting, they don't know a lot about pistol shooting, and they may not know a lot about concealed carry or about the gear that civilians should carry, or again, even legally what you can and can't do. So just be careful of credentials. Some of my favorite instructors are guys that have been law enforcement and military. A lot of my favorites have never done anything like that. They're just civilians that have been through a lot of really good training. They have, read a lot of good books. Masad Ayub has a book called Deadly Force that's all about the legal use of deadly force. That's phenomenal. So just be careful who you listen to. Train with people, read from people, watch videos from people that really know what they're talking about. Don't just assume they know what they're talking about just because they are law enforcement or military.
That's a good point. How do you know if they know what they're talking about?
It's a great question. Really, a good place to start is active self-protection. So you guys can shout out in the chat if you've heard of him. If you've heard of them, I assume that most people that are at least remotely interested in concealed carry have heard about them. But Active Self-Protection is a YouTube channel. They've got several million subscribers. They post a video every single day that is a breakdown of a security video of an actual self-defense encounter. So it may be a shooting, maybe a dog attack, it may be a bar fight, but it's all these self-defense encounters caught on video. And man, they have some awesome instructors that speak on there. I've been to their conference a couple years ago. I plan on going next year. And that's kind of how I made so many connections with just instructors that I fell in love with. Yeah, Brian said awesome channel. They're phenomenal and just great people, like very loving, kind people. But look for people that don't just give rough answers. Like if you're taking a concealed carry class or you're watching a YouTube video and somebody gets a hard question or they have a controversial question and they just answer it like matter-of-factly, or they dodge the question, especially when it comes to legal questions of self-defense and things like that, really look into why they may be right or why they may not be, because you really have to search for yourself. It's kind of like visiting a church or listening to a pastor, right? Like you want to hear what he has to say, but you really need to search scripture and figure out, search your own heart, search scripture and figure out what's true and what's not. And same thing with especially legal things. Go check the laws in your state and see if they're actually right.
Yeah.
And see what they can do. Like if you have an instructor that like wants to teach you how to be faster or more accurate, like does he have videos where he's actually faster and accurate? Like does he actually train regularly and go to other people's classes? Or does he just like, I know it all, I don't need to listen to anybody, I'll tell everybody else how to do it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things in our trade. Are you learning from somebody that thinks they know everything, or are they the type that's trying to grow themselves? Because
Yeah.
nobody knows everything, and the trades trade as far. I don't know about what you do, but in my trade, it's changing so fast that you've got to be willing to learn more.
Yeah. And the best teachers are the best students, right? Like the ones that are really committed to bettering themselves are the ones that actually know what they're talking about, because they want to learn just like everybody else does.
Yeah. Yep. Well, as we wrap up the show tonight, I've got one last question for Will, but those of you that have joined us before, feel free to do it again. And then also those of you that are new, just share if you know a good heating and air company across the country. Feel free to share who they are and where they're located. You never know, you might be able to send them some business. Somebody in your area might see your comment, and let's share. There's so many bad ones out there. Let's share the love with some of the good ones there. And the other thing I want to mention is, as I said at the beginning of the show, we're going to be back to Tuesday nights next week. So we'll be back to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Find out what that time is in your area, time zone. And our guest is going to be one of the folks over at AeroSeal, which is one of the coolest technologies. If you don't know what AeroSeal is, go watch any of my videos. We've talked about them multiple times, but feel free. Can you share that? What you just shared, Will?
I tried to. I don't think it went through. It says the comment has failed.
Got it.
Okay. You want to add it to there?
This is that it was the trauma kit that you were talking about, right?
Mountain Man Medical is the company that I really like. So they have this trauma kit, which is kind of it goes on the back of your pants, or you can keep it in your car. And then this is the one that I actually carry every day that goes on my ankle, and it's got all kinds of goodies in there. Yeah.
So if you guys are interested in getting a trauma kit yourself, click on that link. It's an affiliate link for Will, so you'll show him some support as well. Again, so back to Tuesdays next week at 8:30, and we're going to have one of the top folks over at AeroSeal. And the last thing I want to just say is 2 weeks from now, so not next week, but the week after, we will not have a show that week. I just am not going to be able to do it. So I just wanted to let everyone know. As we wrap up the show, Will, my last question, unless you've got some parting knowledge that you definitely want to touch on, my last question was going to be, what's something that consumers should do more research on before buying a gun?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Honestly, I think that the biggest thing that people get wrong is that they just look online, or they just look without actually getting their hands on the gun, without actually shooting the gun. The best advice that I can give anybody that wants to get into guns, wants to get into shooting, is try to find a community in your area where you can actually try out some guns. I can't tell you how many people I've had in class that come in, and especially in concealed carry class, they come in and they're all excited about their gun because it looks great, and they've looked up all the reviews and they just love it, but they've never shot it before, and they shoot it and they absolutely hate it. And they're like, well, there was $400 down the drain. So if at all possible, like make some friends, or go to a gun store that lets you rent guns. A lot of bigger gun stores will let you do that at their gun range, and get some experience, or just sign up for a class that you don't have to have a gun for, so that you can get the hang of it and try out some of their gear, to really, see what you shoot well. Cause that's the most important thing that a gun needs to do, right? You need to be able to conceal it so that you can carry it every day, but you need to be able to shoot it well. Because the reason that you carry a gun is because you might need to use it, right? It's not as a paperweight that you keep with you. It's so that if you need to defend your life, you can do it effectively with that tool. So it needs to be a tool that not only fits in your hands well, but you are really comfortable and proficient at shooting. And that only comes with training and practice.
What if they're not comfortable with any guns? They've tried 6 to 8 to 10 guns, and they're not finding that one. They're nothing feels comfortable.
Yeah. So that's the thing is so many people look for or chase after the next best gun, or thinking that the gun is just going to make them a better shooter, right? They'll get a gun and think, well, this trigger pull is too heavy, or this one's just too big for my hands, or this one, the sights must be off on this one, right? And really, like, most of the time, the issue is their skills as a shooter. And once you hone in on that, and you get just some decent, you take a training class and you get some decent skills, then you can actually make a educated assumption to say, like, okay, I shot this one that's a little bit smaller, and then I have this one that's bigger, and the bigger one, I just can't hold on to it well when I'm shooting it. So maybe the smaller one is a better fit for me. Or maybe you shoot the smaller one and it's just the recoil is snappy in your hand. So you think, I need something bigger to really get my hands on. So really, I mean, it's such a hard question to answer as far as, like, what is the best gun, because the best gun is the one that you shoot well and the one that you can carry every day, which means it's going to be totally different for everybody. Like, I've had guys in my class that, that want to have the biggest, baddest gun, and they can shoot it great, no problem. My favorite people to have in class are grandmas. Like, old ladies are the best, because you get these big burly guys in the class and they're like, I know how to do it. Like, they don't want to learn anything. And I'm like, look, like, I'm here to help you. If you want to get better, I can help. If not, then there's not much I can do. But old ladies, like, they'll get up there, you'll lay the gun on the table, and they're like, all right, now how do I pick it up? Like, they want to know everything. They want you to take them through step by step. And so be a good student. Sign up for a class. There's tons of classes where you don't have to have a gun in order to take it. I do private coaching sessions. It's one of my favorite things that I teach, where I do that. Like, I let students come in and try out different guns. You don't have to bring a gun. You don't have to bring ammo. You don't have to bring anything. You just show up and try out different guns, and we work on some skills, and it gives you a rough idea of what caliber do I like, what size gun do I like, and what can I actually carry on my body. So it really depends on the person, and it depends on what you shoot well.
Okay, awesome. We're going to wrap up with that. Again, we'll be back next week, Tuesday nights. We'll be back on Tuesday nights, which is our normal night, at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, 2 weeks from now, we will not be having a show. So we will be back next week with the fella from AeroSeal. And looks like we do have one. Yeah, Ryan brings up a question. Ryan, watch our show back. We actually talked about that exact topic. So we did go through that. So Ryan joined us late tonight. So he's usually one of the folks that join us every week, Will. So anyway.
Well, we answered your question.
Yeah, we did go through that.
Early.
So, yep.
Sorry, Ryan.
That said, again, thank you to everyone. We're up to 60,000 subscribers now, which is
Woo-hoo.
very, very thankful. And that's a big heart to those of you that have subscribed. And again, make sure you go subscribe to Will's content, all kinds of cool stuff over there, including favorite Christmas movies.
Of course.
You and I got in a big debate over that, and that was kind of fun.
I'm pretty sure I lost subscribers with that.
I think your comment to me was you have the right to be wrong or something.
Yeah,
like that,
yeah. Everybody's entitled
like,
to the wrong opinion, for sure. Yeah.
that's like a dagger when you're debating over that.
Exactly.
So, but anyway, that said, we'll be back next week, next Tuesday. Make it a great week. We'll see you then. Take care.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thank you, Will. Thank you.
Yeah.